Welcome back to AP World History. We're going to be looking at Chapter 29. This is after World War I and before World War II. Certainly there's going to be a lot of revolutions and social unrest, economic downturns, and in a response to this, people are going to turn to dictators to work out their problems. There's certainly a lot of information in this particular chapter. You're not going to be expected to know everything. There's just too much, but we'll try to hit the high points. The 1920s and 30s were certainly a time of prosperity for some parts of the world, particularly the United States and Japan, because they had not been touched necessarily by the war and other places. There is going to be a sense of optimism in the United States. Europe is going to struggle for a bit, and then eventually in the middle of the 1920s get back on its feet. By the 1930s, the Great Depression will have hit, and it will affect most economies in the world. There's going to be revolutions in Mexico, Russia, China, people vying for power. The Roaring Twenties is a time of inflation. Governments printed a lot of new money. They were, instead of raising taxes to make the economy grow. Art and science benefited from new ideas. A Cubist movement, not that you necessarily have to know that, but it's drawing paintings with different perspectives, several different perspectives. This is a time of mass consumption, consumer credit in the United States and elsewhere as people want new improved products. After Australia gained independence in 1901, it will still become a part of the Commonwealth as New Zealand and Canada and so forth. The United States does quite well during the 1920s. In fact, there's unparalleled optimism. The United States is in a period of isolationism. They never joined the League of Nations, the brainchild of Woodrow Wilson. During this time, Japan will continue to industrialize and expand and increase its navy and army. They certainly will be flexing their muscles in Asia. They will first take Korea, and then they will have their eyes on parts of China, particularly Manchuria. There will be tension between the Japanese military and the civilian government during this time as just which direction Japan's going to go. And they're going to be a menace in the east for China and Russia and some other countries. This is also a time where they come up with the Kellogg-Briand Pact. This is an agreement signed by the United States, created by the United States and France, in hopes of ensuring peace forever. And they outlawed war as a means of diplomacy, unless you were fighting a defensive war. It lulls people into believing that there will never be another world war. This is a time where greater gender equality will sweep Western Europe and the United States. Women will be entering new professions and experiencing the right to vote in the United States and elsewhere. It's not the golden age for women, but certainly they're gaining ground in terms of their rights. The U.S. industrial centers flourish. In agriculture, they weren't damaged by the war, so they're going to be booming and they're going to be supplying other folks. This is a time when the United States is very optimistic about the future. They have a policy of laissez-faire. They don't really affect business too much. And they want to stay out of other people's business, and they just want to make money. And they will make lots of automobiles and other consumer items. Meanwhile, in places like Italy, things aren't going quite so well. And there's a fellow named Benito Mussolini who will bring fascists to Italy. It was a way to stabilize the country. They had massive unemployments, high inflation. The economy was a mess. There was a lot of different factions vying for power in Italy. He will bring corporations and the government together, working in a kind of a cooperative effort. Fascism is sort of a hybrid between capitalism, socialism. There is some free enterprise. That is, you can have business and make a profit, but you also have to adhere to government regulations. He preaches nationalistic ideas that the Italians are the greatest people in the world. Of course, everybody kind of preaches that too. Tendency towards jingoism, that is, his country was the best. Certainly had a persona of being a tough guy. The Italians seem to embrace this. The Italians were not that necessarily happy with the Treaty of Versailles after World War One. This was signed in 1919. They didn't get the things that they thought that they should from the war, where others did. Their economy was sluggish, and Benito Mussolini seems to be a superman. Not only does fascism grow in Italy, but it will also grow in Spain and also in Germany. Totalitarian governments, although they started out as democracies after World War I, will fall into dictatorships in many places in Eastern Europe. So fascism attack the weakness of democracy and the corruption of capitalism, and they'll take control, and they will be in power to midway through World War II. In fact, the king of Italy called Mussolini to form a new government because he believes he's the best man to lead the government. Biography of Mussolini. He was hoping to restore the Roman Empire of days past. He will be the leader of the fascist party in Italy, and he will become allies to Germany prior to World War II. Eventually, he will be overthrown and assassinated by his own people. Picture of the voice from the past. New countries that were created in Central Europe after World War I. You can see a variety of countries in Europe. Many of them will turn to authoritarian or dictatorships. France, Great Britain will remain democracies, as will the Netherlands, Holland. But many of these countries will fall into either fascism or dictatorships. But authoritarian regimes will be prominent there. Now, turning our attention to Mexico, they're not going to ask a number of questions about this on the AP exam, but certainly there was political unrest in Mexico from 1910 to 1920. Was the Mexican Revolution, certainly influenced by the outbreak of World War I. Pancho Villa, Diaz, Madero, Zapata are all going to be people involved in this revolution. And eventually, each faction will be overcome by another, and slowly but surely they will arrive at one dictatorship. Obrego, a general, defeated Villa and emerged as the leader of Mexico in 1915. He was elected president, and the Civil War will come to an end. Mexico has a constitution, and they attempted to have some social change, but the poor certainly are going to be mistreated like they always are in most countries. This new constitution that they put together in 1917 limited the ownership of foreigners in their country, new rights for workers, some restrictions on the Catholic Church. They provide education for the young, some. limited, and land reforms comes later. That is, allowing the Indians and the poor to own land that had previously been owned by large haciendas, patrons. Um, Eventually, they will come to one political party, the PRI, and this will control politics in Mexico for about 70 years, uh, and essentially just a dictatorship. In terms of culture in Mexico, Diego Rivera, uh, Jose Clemente Orozco will attempt to capture Mexico in art. Uh, a lot of their themes represent the Mexican people. They seem to be opposed to the church in a lot of their paintings. Elsewhere, the communists, certainly after 1917, are going to take out the Tsarist government. They're going to sue for peace with Germany in World War I, so they're not going to be there on the end. Uh, the Tsar, Nicholas II, will abdicate. Eventually, he'll be arrested, and he and his family will be killed. Uh, they're going to institute some reforms. Peasants like the idea of land, getting out of the war, and bread, and being a little bit in a system that's a little bit more responsive to them. They, remember, had been under an autocratic system, a dictatorship by the czars for hundreds of years. They've come to a point where they're sick and tired of that. Provisional governments are set up throughout Russia. The Bolsheviks are eventually going to be the group that comes to take control in Russia. Immediately after they take control, there will be a civil war against the white and the red Russians. The white representing the Europeans, helping overthrow the communist government in Russia. The commissars, the Council of People's Commissars, was supposed to be created to rule the Russian people. Lenin will emerge as a leader of the Bolsheviks, and he will shut down the parliament and replace it with a Congress of Soviets. And civil war will last from 1918 to 1921. And this was reactionaries trying to reinstate the nobility, the autocratic government, but they will fail. One of the things that Lenin does quickly is he there's redistribution of land, and the state takes over the basic industry. They still are set with problems of famine and unemployment, so a lot of their problems are not going to go away. The land is collectivized. People work on collectives to grow crops for the good of the state. The Red Army is going to be led by Leon Trotsky, and eventually he will be run out of Russia, later killed in Mexico. But they are going to go through a point of collectivizing things, people working together. Russia will be called the Union of Socialist Republic. Still a dictatorship, pretty much, other than there's a few more people at the top calling the shots. Now we're going to stop here, and then we'll pick this up next time.